We are looking at the Boris Nemtsov Forum now, where you gave a report about freedom. What do you think the situation is with freedom in Russia today? Has it become worse?
I think that in Russia, over the past few years, the degree of freedom has been reduced. There's been a consolidation of the kind of autocratic system that Putin put in place, and it's happened gradually. You know, he began by taking away power from, oblasts and localities and reducing the kind of political competition that is permitted, increasing control over the media. So in general, it's become a less free country than it was previously.
What do you think about the current Russian opposition? Are they able to confront the ruling party?
Well, I don't think that it's really possible to gain any significant power. There's been some action at a very local level for mayors and city councils and things of that sort. But I think the real power is still held very centrally in Moscow. And there, I don't think that the current government is going to permit any real competition or really a real opportunity for the opposition to make any advances.
What did Boris Nemtsov manage to do for Russian progress or its freedom and democracy?
I think that the most important contribution was just a vision of a more open Russian society and a more democratic one. I think he demonstrated that, in the way that he governed in Nizhny Novgorod, that Russia could be a responsive, accountable place, but unfortunately he never really got to take that nationally or to have that model replicated in other parts of Russia.
Recently, Russia had elections where the opposition had no chance to present itself. As a result, protests began in Moscow and the government reacted very harshly. What is your opinion about this reaction? Does this show that the government flaunts its power or the ruling party is starting to feel fear?
Well, I think it shows weakness on the part of the ruling party because, they've been very repressive, and despite the threats to the opposition, a lot of people still were willing to come out and take the risk of protesting, even if in the end they weren't successful. So I think it shows that there's discontent and the government's control is really not as total as they would like.
How would you characterize the Russian path under Putin's direction for almost 20 years now?
I think that really what Putin has done is to freeze development of Russian society. Economically, there's been very little structural change. Russia still remains heavily dependent on oil and gas. I think that there's very little social mobility. Wealth is still held by a very small circle of people around Putin. So in all those respects, it's like the society is frozen in a block of ice. And it's too bad because I think there's a lot of potential in Russia for a much more dynamic kind of society.
Okay, so in your opinion, why in the 21st century do the authoritarian regimes still exist? How long will they continue?
I think that part of the problem is that these authoritarian regimes also become what are called kleptocracies, that they control resources which in the modern world can be very extensive and very concentrated, and then they can use that to keep themselves in power. It's a form of political corruption that uses economic resources and the ability to extract those resources to buy political power, and that makes them very invulnerable to outside pressure.